Thunder. Thunder. Thunder click. Oh!
So this is actually a video I started last year, but eventually scrapped because, yeah, the YouTubes were like flooded with videos on this goddamn Clik Valve, and I didn't really think I had much to add to that. But on my last video, on the new wheels, there were a few people that actually caught on and saw that I was using the Clik Valves. And I got a few questions, a few comments here and there, so I thought, why just not add my little 2 cents to the story? So, presta valves. You heard it all before, they're 100 years old, the hair never changed, and yeah, and I think actually there's a good reason for that, because they do work really well. Sure, they have their flaws, I would say probably mostly when it comes to tubeless setups, but there's never really been any major issue for me personally that have made me look for something different or better or whatever. The reason I got into the Clik Valve game is actually not the valve itself. It is this. This is my lovely, my beloved, my Bianchi pump. This is the first pump I got when I got to Japan all those years ago. I love this thing. It's been absolutely rock solid until recently when the chuck actually, or the pump head actually started to, yeah, show some deterioration. It didn't want to seal properly. Even though I give it a good clean from time to time, it really started to show wear. So I was looking around actually to get a new, just a simple new presta chuck or pump head, whatever you want to call it. And during that search, I actually got recommended the Clik Valve conversion kit that includes 1 pump head and 2 cores. And then I was like, that's way cheaper than a new presta chuck, so what the hell, I might as well see what the fuss is all about. Well, I did go down the rabbit hole first to just make sure I didn't go in totally blind. And I think that's kind of 3 things for me that I really wanted to know before I took the dive. The first one is the Clik Valve replaces the Presta core like straight off. You don't need special valve stems or stuff like that. Just swap that core for the Clik one and you're good to go. Second one is, of course, you can still use Presta pumps. I guess with some exceptions, all of mine has been working fine. The pressure readings might be slightly off, but I knew I can use my existing gear to fix anything roadside if I had a puncture and stuff like that. Now, third point for me is that they seem to be pretty much everywhere in Japan. Every single bike store I went to has a section for just Clik valves now, so they seem to be winning the alternative valve solution, at least here in Japan. So initially I got the conversion kit, like I said, with the chuck and 2 valves. This was the Schwalbe version. As for installing the chuck on the old pump, it was, yeah, pretty that simple. Not really anything I need to explain, I think. While I could unscrew the old chuck, the last hose insert, or whatever you call it, I simply had to cut away, remove that lock nut from the Clik head, put that over the hose, then press that nipple thingamajig into the hose, thread the nut back on, and all done. Simple as that. Now, the main merit of this system is, of course, the inflation, or more specifically, that click interface. It's simply just click on, there's no threading, there's no locking levers or anything like that. Click it on and pump away, and then just remove it with almost 0 air loss whatsoever. Brilliant. Now, I'm sure you already knew about that, and that is the main thing for sure. There are some other bonuses I found, and also some downsides. One thing I really like is that you can install and remove the valve cores by hand. Finger tight is airtight, at least in my experience. That means it's also very easy to swap the cores out on the road if something were to really go sideways. And while it is rare, like roadside repairs, I think actually that's where the Clik system kind of shines the most. While I initially used my Presta gear for those repairs as well, I quickly picked up a Clik adapter as well for that fits both my Lesign mini pump and my electrical pump that I've been shitting on those pumps for so many years, but here we are. I think that's a topic for another video though. Anyway, it's such a peace of mind knowing that you don't unscrew a valve core by mistake or bend that little valve pin by mistake or something like that. Those kind of worries are gone basically. Now, I'm not a CO2 user, but I think like a CO2 and a Clik valve would be the absolute best and fastest way to mend a puncture out on the road in a race scenario, I think. Judging from a few stories I heard around Outbound this year, for example, I think a few people out there would have benefited from the Clik valves paired with those caps that you get with the Clik valves as well, especially in those muddy conditions. That would have helped a few people, I think. Those goddamn caps are ugly as sin, but I think it's a cheap insurance in those crazy muddy conditions that they seem to experience over there. While the effective install length are borderline the same as the Presta valve, I will say maybe a millimeter longer or something like that, the engagement of the pumps kind of sits higher up, so the valve stem itself can generally be shorter. As long as the Clik valve kind of sticks up over the rim, so to speak, you will have full engagements. So you could potentially save a gram or two with some shorter valve stems, if you're like one of us. On the flip side of that, I have some bad news. I think I've read somewhere at least that they claim that the Clik valves are the same weight as a Presta valve, and that is simply not true. A pair of Presta valves are 2.8 grams on my scales, and a pair of Clik valves are 4.8. Now, of course, you could argue that 2 grams is nothing to cry about. Well, I could concede that if you really want me to, but claiming that it's the exact same weight when it's basically 60% heavier, it's unacceptable. Come on. Now, while I do think it's generally harder to clog a Clik valve than a Presta valve, I don't think it's impossible. As you can see here, after a few months, I checked my valves here, and you can definitely see some sealant residue around that inlet or outlet, or whichever let you want to call it. So every time you click the pump head on, you'll see that the valve will be open to the inside of the tire. So definitely not clog proof. While I've not had any issues myself, I do see a scenario where this could end up clogging up. And you know, that internal little spring mechanism, that's another little complexity that might end up causing some trouble. Now, in practice, I remove the valve cores every time I refill sealant and stuff like that. So give my cores an inspection and remove any sealant if there's anything there. So for me personally, it's not something I would worry about, but still, I would not call this fail-proof. Now, while not an issue for me personally, because I already have an extra floor pump or a tubeless pump that I can use to inflate tires without the cores on them, I thought it would be worth mentioning that you can't really use the Clik head for that purpose. It won't seal directly on a valve stem without the core, so to speak. The Clik head is basically only compatible with the Clik cores themselves. Now, last little thing I could give it a knock for is the price. Well, I said in the beginning it actually became cheaper for me to go with a Clik conversion kit than a new chuck, so I'm kind of contradicting myself. But valve for valve, TPU tube for TPU tube, like the complete tubeless valve kits, they're basically more expensive than the Presta alternatives. But if you already have valve stems and say inner tubes with removable valve cores, I would just get the cores by themselves. Yeah, and to be totally fair, even if it's more expensive, it's not like it's the most expensive part to begin with anyways. We're talking like skipping coffee next time you visit a cafe, although if you're skipping coffee, you might not really need to go to cafe, to be fair. Each to their own, of course. I'm definitely sticking with this. I do like them, but I've heard us all as crazy, like, this is a game changer. And that is a bit of a stretch in my opinion. I think the 100-year-old Presta valves, they still work pretty damn good. A game changer for me would be more like, say, descending on rim brakes on carbon rims and then suddenly go to disc brakes. Yeah, that is a true game changer that actually changed the game. Well, if I only could pick one, I would stick with the disc brakes. Anyway, I think that is pretty much all I have to say about this for now. They might get another mention in an upcoming Every Ride Carry update video. I need to come clean there eventually. So yeah, I guess I catch you in the next one. Peace.